The rate of fraud. It is maybe an atypical one in the sense that in the past, Romania was touched by more allegations of fraud than other member states on average. But I am underlining that we are talking about suspicion of fraud. We're not talking about established fraud. Okay. So I rather prefer, instead of speaking about fraud, to talk about irregularities. Yeah. Because fraud is a very difficult notion. It requires intentionality, yes, from the side of a beneficiary, which is very difficult to establish in most cases. And indeed, in most cases that concerned Romania, fraud in the criminal sense has not been established. Yes. So we stayed at the level of irregularities, that is, an infraction against European or national legislation when it comes to the implementation of agricultural funds. I think from all we know, because at the European Commission we cannot know everything, but from all we know from information that we receive from the member state, Romania has greatly improved. Greatly improved in comparison to the situation that existed in SAPAR times 10 years ago or 12 years ago. So it has been a rather dramatic change, also because we observe that the administrative bodies in Romania, like AFIR, have made enormous progress in professionalizing their staff and in implementing better administrative and control procedures.
So it's a continuing process?
Yes, but it points into the right direction. Things that were in very bad or very doubtful state 10 years ago, 8 years ago, have been replaced by procedures that are much better, much more appropriate, much more modern than they were back in the past. And in particular, this paying agency, AFIR, has installed a number of procedures, control procedures, administrative procedures that we in Brussels can consider as good or best practices. The European Commission doesn't impose anything specific on artificial conditions. There is an article in European legislation concerning rural development that says that no funds, no European funds shall be paid towards a project that has been created artificially. That is what European legislation says in one spot, and it is a provision that is rather horizontal. It does not give any detail. So it is up to practical administrative life and to the courts to determine in substance what does that actually mean. We contribute from the European Commission, we contribute to clarifying the notion, in particular through audit work, where colleagues from the audit directorates come and examine the procedures inside the agency, do an audit on a sample of individual files, and start a discussion with the member state, with Romania in this case, whether or not that specific scenario could be an artificial creation of funding conditions. So the notion is difficult to understand, and if one is not more interested and a little bit more experienced in this sort of business, it is not always very easy to understand what artificial conditions actually represent, what they mean, what they are. It was a huge problem in the past, and I'm talking about the recent past. So starting with the programming period of 2007, there, the Commission became aware in 2012-13 that there were many concerns with the creation of artificial funding conditions in Romania. By the way, not only in Romania, but in Romania also. And the first findings suggested that the authorities, the paying agency in particular, was confronted to a problem that seemed very exotic to them. They did not react very appropriately to these findings. And in particular, we discovered that the paying agency did not have very many administrative tools to properly react to a situation of possible artificial conditions.
So it was a lack of legislation for the moment, at that moment?
No, it was not a lack of legislation, it was a lack of experience.
Yeah.
It was a lack of professional training and experience on the side of staff, which could be improved, of course.
And now is improving?
Greatly improving, greatly improving. I've had the privilege this morning to see in the Parliament before the Committee of Agriculture the concerns that there were about the artificial conditions, and many parliamentarians, many members of that committee expressed their concerns about it, and my impression is that it is also motivated through the fact that the administration has become so much better in tackling problems related to this phenomenon. My general recommendation is not different than the recommendation I would give to any other member state. It is be professional, be well informed, and pursue your administration with integrity. Treat everybody alike, and have the courage and have the force to bring to the light of day things that are not right and take the right consequences. It depends very much on the case. You cannot give a standard answer to what you ask. Why? Because first, we have the empirical experience that the artificial creation of funding conditions becomes very often only visible at the very end. Yeah. You can have a suspicion, you can believe something is artificial about a specific project, but you cannot put your finger on it until the company is up and running using the investment. So the fact that a beneficiary has had controls without any findings through the second, third, fourth installment must not necessarily mean something. It is different, obviously, if you have a beneficiary with a very doubtful project where many elements have been visible from the outset. Many elements for artificial conditions, but for one reason or another, the inspectors of the paying agency have not reacted to that. Then possibly, you can come to a situation where the beneficiary could invoke a legal protection of his confidence that he gave in the former controls. But there are many cases in between, so it is impossible to give a standard answer. The truth is that in many cases, the artificiality of the creation of funding conditions becomes only visible once the project is up and running. I have been invited in order to explain, in order to advise. This morning before the Agricultural Committee of the Romanian Parliament to give some explanations and to contribute to a better understanding of members of the Parliament and others what this problem is all about. So this is not an inspection visit to Romania at all. It was 2 hours or almost 2 hours of questions and comments. Yes, and I very much hope that I have been able to convey some information to them, some explanations to them, so that they can better appreciate the problem, that they can better appreciate the risk for everybody involved, which is on the one hand the paying agency, on the other hand the beneficiaries, and on the third side, one must not forget that, the Romanian budget, the national budget to which taxpayers contribute. Because if the European Commission finds weaknesses and decides to apply financial corrections onto the execution of the program, it is the Romanian taxpayer who has to pay that. The money has gone to the beneficiaries. Maybe it will never come back, but the European Commission wants the money back. So I hope they have understood. I hope that I have contributed to their understanding, and time will tell if this initiative bears any fruit. But I can only contribute with very, very little. It is work that has to be done here in Romania by the parliamentarians themselves, but also assisted by the expert knowledge of the paying agency.